Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. Thank you, as always, for spending time with us. Democrats, victims, and villains. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, if Democrats are wondering why they can't seem to fix their brand, they might want to consider whom they treat as villains and victims. Now, most Americans believe that criminals should be prosecuted, and most Americans want illegals deported. They don't have sympathy for visa overstayers. Everyone knows the rules. And they don't think anti-American radicals should be given student or work visas at all. But not Democrats. Pro-Palestinian agitators are passionate advocates. And illegal aliens? They're just innocent victims of a corrupt immigration enforcement system. Case in point, liberal Congressman Dan Goldman, one of the worst. He prefers more illegals in the United States and fewer arrests of illegals. And he's upset about the ICE way of dressing.
I asked them, I said to them, what is the point here? Are you just trying to tally more arrests? I didn't get any real response. And then I said to them, why are you wearing masks? I was a federal prosecutor for 10 years. I worked with ICE agents. I worked with law enforcement agents. I never saw any of them wear masks. This is brand new. And the question is, if everything is legitimate and proper, why are you wearing masks to hide your face?
Wait a second. Whoa. Wait a second. Suddenly, Mr. COVID is against masks? Wait, was he against them when they were ripping down the statues of the Summer of Love? This is very interesting. I remember this tweet. Quote, the fact that there is even such a thing as anti-mask in America is an indictment of the president and humiliating around the world. Now, first off, did he ever think that the reason that some of these ICE agents might choose to wear masks or cover their faces is directly related to the inflammatory rhetoric his party uses, including himself, to describe them?
This is Gestapo-like behavior, where plainclothes officers wearing masks are terrorizing immigrants.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons. No chance to mount a defense.
Torture dungeon was watching your vice presidential debate. I think he said gazpacho. Anyway, these ICE officers are being threatened on a daily basis because of these type of vicious verbal attacks. And Democrats, when you listen to them, they're practically begging for these agents to get grief or to be assaulted. ICE officers in San Diego last week were carrying out a raid and were branded as terrorists by another Democratic councilman there, Sean Elo Rivera. Again, for Democrats, the illegals are the innocent victims. ICE are the criminals. Now, this guy's comments to local media were just as bad. He told the Los Angeles Times, quote, I've seen firsthand the pain and trauma caused when our neighbors are targeted by aggressive military-style federal enforcement when ICE agents stormed Buona Forchetta with military-style weapons. That wasn't safety. It was an attempt to terrorize San Diegans into compliance. No, it was an attempt to enforce immigration law and keep ICE agents safe. What an open border zealot he is. Now, of course, the media are a major part of the problem as well. Look at this misleading LA Times headline. ICE agents with assault rifles toss flashbangs into trendy San Diego neighborhood. Community fights back. Now, notice how those attempting to obstruct federal law enforcement are righteously fighting back in the headline. They're the heroes, of course, which only encourages more of this. And of course, ICE had to use non-lethal flashbangs, but only to disperse the crowd forming around the agents so that they could actually do their jobs and exit the scene safely. I guess Democrats don't care about that. No, they want to keep it as unsafe as possible. They wonder why people are turning against this party. So Democrats, they are on a crusade, but it's not to keep Americans safe from criminals, but to keep illegals safe from ICE. Now, we saw this dynamic at play outside that New Jersey ICE facility last month. And there was similar pro-illegal performance theater in Worcester, Mass. Last month as well. That was when ICE showed up to arrest a criminal alien accused of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, allegedly against her pregnant 16-year-old daughter. Democrat City Councilor Itel Hajiaj went ballistic and stepped in to help the illegal resist ICE.
Take her! Take her!
Stop right there. Stop.
This is my constituent. No, you do not touch me. Do not touch me.
I need you to go over there.
I need you to not touch me.
Obstructing a federal arrest.
Do not touch me.
Come on. Let's go. Come on.
Please don't touch me. No,
You're obstructing a federal arrest right now. Do you understand that?
Let's go.
You can be charged.
The people who are under arrest are under arrest,
She's
okay?
not. She hasn't done anything.
She's under arrest.
Please let her go. Let her go. She hasn't done anything. She's traumatized.
Okay, if she hadn't been put in jail, right, she should have been put in jail. There have to be consequences to this. But this is the modern-day Democrat Party. By repeatedly painting law enforcement as evil, they're playing with fire. They were playing with fire in 2020, and they're playing with fire now. Also in San Diego, by the way, when ICE arrested an illegal last Friday, this bystander videoed the operation, and we hear his own warped perspective during this. Watch.
My man, I'm sorry. I'm sorry Trump's an I'm sorry they voted for this. When people start fighting back, then what y'all gonna do? Y'all gonna shoot every American? When we start fighting back, what y'all gonna do? Y'all gonna shoot Americans then? Because that's what we gonna start doing. We're gonna start fighting back. God shame, all y'all should put a bullet in y'all heads. Doing Trump's work, every single one of y'all put a bullet in your head. Yeah, I said it, what?
Wow. The story does not end there, though, because as bad as all that is, imagine being so engulfed by anti-Trump hate that you can't admit the true evil among us. Those who seek to kill innocent Americans like Egyptian national Mohammed Solomon. Remember, he's on that expired tourist visa. The man should never have been allowed to remain in the United States, but somehow he did. But because Democrats elevate the plight of foreigners over everyday Americans, Democrats will always find a reason to criticize Trump instead of standing against the real villains here.
Of course we need answers. We need answers about the visa overstay, and a visa overstay has nothing to do with the border. You know, I believe in border security. We need border security, but in this incident, it doesn't look like that is what is at play here at all. President Trump has been president for nearly 6 months now. And I want to know why an attack that had been planned for the entirety of that time was missed.
Congressman should eat crow. Doesn't even merit a response, but I'll give him one anyway. I'll spell it out because he apparently can't understand the obvious. Border enforcement, sir, is immigration enforcement. And immigration enforcement requires that all the laws be enforced at the border and in the interior of the United States when foreigners without citizenship or any other right to be here decide to flout our rules, the laws that you all pass in Congress. What a dope. Is that somehow too hard for Congressman Crow to understand? And look at this headline from The Guardian. Trump administration uses Colorado's suspect status to push deportation agenda. Okay, so they're quibbling with semantics instead of acknowledging the obvious problem of having several 100,000 people here, foreigners, on expired visas. Remember, there were other people who exploited our visa system 24 years ago. They were the 9/11 hijackers, committed the worst terror attack on America ever. But again, facts don't matter. The media and the Democrats have their villain, and it's Donald Trump and those who carry out his agenda, and they have their victims, and they're foreigners who commit crimes, those who abuse our generous immigration policies. So take that simple framing to the voters in 2026, and let's see what America they vote for. And that's the angle.
Fox News alert, the Biden White House is under investigation, and Trump's got a new nickname for the big guy. He's now called the Autopen. Bondi and her team are investigating whether Biden was competent and whether others were taking advantage of him. Did the Autopen know what it was signing? The Autopen signed 8,000 pardons. But did Joe know? Was the pen going behind Joe's back and letting Hunter sign with it? Did Dr. Jill use the pen? Did donors? We're not sure, but we're finally going to get answers.
When you look at these last-minute Biden pardons, the big ones, Biden siblings, Fauci, January 6th committee.
That's right.
Most of the big ones have the same very neat signature. We would expect that probably to be the Autopen. Is this White House of the opinion that the only pardon that would count is one that the president signed himself?
The president is making a good point when he discusses the usage of the Autopen. Who was running the country for the past 4 years? Perhaps those documents were signed with the Autopen. As you saw, Ed Martin made an announcement at the Department of Justice this morning to launch an investigation because the American people deserve answers.
Donald Trump had his hand an inch from the Bible, about to be sworn in a second time. And the Autopen was on a pardon bender. The Heritage Foundation did their own investigation. Quote, "We gathered every document we could find with Biden's signature over the course of his presidency. All used the same Autopen signature, except for the announcement that the former president was dropping out of the race last year." Then they did a side-by-side. These are the signatures from Biden's final day. Pardons for the family, the J6 committee, Fauci, Milley, all neatly signed, identical. This 82-year-old's penmanship never wavered, not even a smidge. But this goes back decades. The Autopen was first used regularly by President Truman. He used it for simple stuff like thank you notes, nothing serious. Obama changed that. Barry had a portable Autopen that he used in Europe to sign major legislation. First time a machine ever signed an actual bill. The pen was the best kept secret in the Oval. It lives in the White House, typically in the Office of Presidential Records. How does it work? Simple. The president gives a thumbs up, the doc gets stacked, Autopen goes to work, and then a final verification. W's Justice Department codified it. They said, yeah, Autopen counts, but one catch. Quote, "We emphasize that we are not suggesting the president may delegate the decision to approve and sign a bill. Only that, having made this decision, he may direct a subordinate to affix the president's signature on the bill." The big question, did Biden direct someone to sign his name or not? Or did aides have free rein? Speaker Johnson says Biden was out of the loop.
Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me, stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed.
Even Biden's West Wing knew the Autopen was the real chief. Two former White House sources said a top Biden aide may have gone rogue, using the Autopen like it was their own magic wand. Crypto czar David Sachs says Pocahontas wielded the wand.
What the Biden administration was doing, and let's face it, it wasn't Biden. Elizabeth Warren controlled the Autopen during that administration. She, for some reason, has this pathological hatred of the crypto community. She wants to drive this community offshore. She doesn't want it happening in the United States. That's the wrong policy for the United States.
If Biden didn't approve the use of the Autopen for a certain order, then that's forgery. It's falsifying a federal document. That's a major felony. Also, if the president isn't competent to be president, then he's not competent to use the Autopen. All the books, all the videos, all the chaos we saw for 4 years could be used as evidence to prove he wasn't competent. Investigators should be looking at emails from White House insiders discussing Autopen protocol. A smoking gun document or a whistleblower could blow the whole thing wide open and invalidate pardons, executive orders, even legislation. Simone Sanders was there, but don't you dare ask her about a pen that ran the country.
I have to ask who's actually making the decisions. Who is actually running the country? Everybody wants to say Joe Biden wasn't running the country. I know for a fact he not only read his presidential daily brief, he was engaged in the meeting, he asked questions, and he gave directives. Donald Trump won't even bother to read the iPad.
Simone knows better. No one thinks Trump needs a CAT scan. Biden's the one who got lost in a closet. Jake Tapper, he already confessed and cashed in on the truth. And since he did, CNN has to cover the Autopen investigation, right? They better if he's talking like this.
But somebody asked me, I forget who it was, but somebody asked me, like, was there an effect when Fox News covered something about Biden that you would revulse from it? And actually, it was the exact opposite. I would be like, what is this? What is this point? What happened? What happened? What happened? I had the opposite effect. But I think you're right that is a phenomenon. Oh, Fox is covering it. It must be false. And that's not the case.
Yeah, no kidding. We don't write books to break news. That's why we have TV shows. We tell the truth right away. All these tell-alls aren't helping the media's credibility. They made it worse. Their ratings look like border crossings, way down. And now the knives are out. MSNBC wants to burn Tapper's book in a bonfire.
No huge banners on the cable news network that recently devoted itself to the issue of presidential mental acuity. That network did not dare devote itself to the mental acuity of Donald Trump. That network decided that the mental acuity of Joe Biden last year is a more important story now. No one at that network suggested that Joe Biden was ever incapable of doing the job of president. Their critique of Joe Biden is that he was incapable of delivering a sharp and polished television debate performance, which would have been true of every single president prior to John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
That's Lawrence O'Donnell. The guy, he needed a vacation, remember, 50 days into Trump's term because he was exhausted. Maybe he should take a cognitive test. Hey, your rules, not mine. The machine's never been weaker. When there's fighting between MSNBC and CNN, we've divided and conquered. Joy Reid, she has her own war stories. She says Comcast tried to put parental controls on her phone.
Once I got to, NBC, and I too joined Twitter back in 2000. I think I joined in 08 or 09, and the bosses were horrified. And anytime I would tweet anything, I would get calls. I would get, please get off Twitter. We hate it. They don't like that it pulls their talent and their reporters out of their control, because now you're not running what you're tweeting through standards and practices. It's giving your personality directly to the audience, which they don't like because it's no longer managed and curated by them. And they don't want people breaking news.
Comcast wasn't worried Joy was going to break news. They were worried she was going to blame the Jews. If Democrats were smart, they'd treat their machine like a Tesla and firebomb it and build back better. It's the only way to cure TDS.
There's a divide between what I would say two teams in the Democratic Party. There's team restraint and team resistance, right? There are those in team resistance who feel like we should react hysterically to everything that Donald Trump says or does. And then there are those who feel like we should pick and choose our battles and be strategic. But I worry that the momentum is on the side of hysterical, hyperbolic resistance, and the enormous expenditure of time and energy and resistance might crowd out the restructuring and moderation that needs to happen within the Democratic Party.
Good luck. Nobody believes a Democrat anymore. Half the party just confessed to the crime of the century, and the other half's having margaritas with MS-13. When you're hooked on TDS harder than Irish Rosie on Xanax, an Autopen investigation is not what the doctor ordered. They're going to need a united front once the subpoenas start flying.
Welcome to Hannity. And tonight, Democrats, their friends, and the state-run legacy media mob, they were wrong again. Another anti-Trump smear is now poof. It's up in smoke, despite their doom and gloom predictions about Donald Trump and the economy. Oh, sad news. Second quarter growth is now slated to smash all expectations. The Atlanta Fed predicting a whopping 6.6% growth in the second quarter. At the same time, job creation way up in the country, wages are up, inflation, Oh, it's at the Fed's benchmark of 2.1. Well, they want 2.0, 0.1% off. In other words, President Donald Trump is keeping his word. The state-run legacy media mob, they look stupid. They look foolish. Once again, the punditry class, forget it. They're absolutely useless, which is not why nobody watches them anymore. We've got all the details coming up in a few minutes and polling numbers that you're going to want to see as well. Also tonight, left-leaning statistician Nate Silver out with new data backs up something we have known on this program for a long time. The Democratic Party is dominated by well, mentally unwell Americans. Hannity's calling Democrats mentally unwell. No, Nate Silver is. We'll tell you what he said. And just when you think the Democratic Party cannot get any more unhinged, think again. Coming up, we're going to bring you the latest edition of Timmy Wall's, Uncle Timmy's investigation into young male voters. This guy cannot be any more wrong on his analysis of what happened in November of last year. But first, this could be the biggest political scandal in American presidential history. As a matter of fact, I believe it's the biggest scandal in presidential history and White House history. Tonight, the Department of Justice has officially opened a major investigation into the Biden administration's prolific use of the Autopen, especially during Biden's final days in office. Let me make a prediction here tonight. There are people that will be in a lot of trouble before this is all said and done. In fact, out of the scores of Biden's last-minute pardons, only one appeared to be physically signed by Joe Biden. Take a look.
When you look at these last-minute Biden pardons, the big ones, Biden siblings, Fauci, January 6th committee.
That's right.
Most of the big ones have the same very neat signature. We would expect that probably to be the Autopen. There is one that looks different. It looks authentic. In fact, if you look at the last name, it almost looks like the president was having a hard time spelling his last name there. Is this White House of the opinion that the only pardon that would count is one that the president signed himself?
It's very interesting. Very interesting props. If you want to bring them to my office later so I can take a closer look, I would like to do that. The president is making a good point when he discusses the usage of the Autopen. Who was running the country for the past 4 years? Perhaps those documents were signed with the Autopen, something that this, I believe the Department of Justice is looking into. As you saw, Ed Martin made an announcement at the Department of Justice this morning to launch an investigation because the American people deserve answers.
All right, that certainly doesn't look good, does it? Now, as a reminder, multiple presidents, they have directed staff to use the Autopen to sign official documents, but the key word here is directed. Past presidents directed their staff to use the Autopen, typically when they were out of town. Now, does anyone on either side of the aisle or in the state-run legacy media mob actually believe Joe Biden was capable of directing his staff to do anything in those final days when they thought they'd run him for re-election and just bring out proof of life occasionally if he won again? It was the other way around. Take a look.
I'm sorry, I'm going to get in trouble with staff if I don't do this the right way. I'm going to get in trouble with my staff. Yeah, go ahead, but I pretend that you didn't answer you. Am I allowed to take any questions? Anybody here in staff? You know, I thought when I got to be president, I'd get to do things that I wanted to do, but my staff tells me what I can't do.
Oh, remember, they controlled every aspect of the president's life. The president of our country is the only person with the power to issue federal pardons, sign executive orders, and sign bills into law. He can do it with his hand, or he can order the use of the Autopen, but it must come from the president, not a cabal of weird advisors who make decisions behind the scenes while Biden is napping every day, pretty much all day. So let's be clear. This is a very real, credible allegation from multiple sources, including the new book from the very low-rated Fake Jake Tapper at Fake News CNN. Based on all the evidence, our own observations, it was obvious, transparent, it was clear. We pointed it out first in 2019 that Biden was mentally incompetent and president in name only, while his senior advisors were running the country by committee. This is a massive security threat and was a security threat to our country. It raises serious questions about whether Biden even knew the Autopen was being used. And if that is the case, none of his Autopen signatures are valid. None of the pardons are legal. And his senior advisors, that would mean they broke the law, violated the Constitution in very serious ways. If true, this would be far worse than Watergate. So tonight, there are two key questions that must be answered. Was Biden mentally unable to perform the duties of the White House? The answer to me seems obvious. And two, did he fully know and understand what the Autopen was actually signing?
So remember when the left was all in on climate change? Every conversation was about melting ice caps, heat waves, and floods. Though to be fair, we were the first to report on the environmental impact of farting cows. But then after October 7th, suddenly climate took a backseat to Free Palestine signs and spray painting Zionists go home. They went from Save the Whales to Jews without missing a beat. Which brings us to Greta Thunberg. She's 22 now, or as Hamas calls it, a cougar. And she's literally on a boat bound for the Middle East called the Freedom Flotilla. It's a lot like the Love Boat, except Isaac is making Molotov cocktails.
Poor Isaac.
Yeah, so yeah, that'll work, because if there's one thing the IDF fears, it's a humorless Scandinavian with a bowl cut and crazy eyes. Then again, she might be the only person to unite the region, against Greta Thunberg. Hell, her presence might even get Hamas to kill themselves. But for those of you who once put this loon on a pedestal, who cried at her UN speeches, who reposted her dramatic Instagram videos, well, you got suckered. You fell for it harder than Joe Biden on a flight of stairs. Turns out she really is a mentally unwell theater kid with a deep need for validation. She went from being the mascot for climate alarmism to the poster child for Gaza virtue signaling, with God knows what in between. Why couldn't she just do what an American teenage girl does who needs attention and date a black guy?
Oh, racism insane. It happens.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
But she's the perfect shill, loud, resentful, and spoiled by the culture she hates. But if you called out her BS, the left went nuts. You monster, she's just a child. They act like you barged into a Shriners hospital and made the kids do keg stands. But Greta is really just a hood ornament for a generation of screwed up libs. One study from 2022 shows that just 20% of them say they have excellent mental health. 45% say they have poor mental health. No wonder they look up to Greta. Crazy adores crazy. It's why Kanye West has a Larry Kudlow tattoo. But it's the promiscuity of activism that reveals the narcissism behind it. It shows that your beliefs are as shallow as your need for attention. It's never been about the issue. It's about her and what does she gain from it. Magazine covers, awards, travel perks, standing ovations from jet-setting elites. Usually to get that many goodies with no skills, you need the last name Biden. She's a scammer who gamed the system by exploiting the elite's addiction to easy virtue. Salute her sanctimony, and it rubs off on you. So now she's off to Gaza. And what of her hometown, Sweden? The formerly safe country that's now one of Europe's most violent, thanks to an influx of migrants who have more in common with Hamas than they do ABBA. Of course, she won't change anything, but the media will call her brave. For, like them, she's an affluent white female liberal and awful, which means people like her never really go away. As long as our pathetic media rewards theatrical outrage, you'll always have ego-mad actors flocking to it like moths to a flame. And if you think that's bad, or you think she's bad, just wait. We're churning out Gretas on every campus, incentivizing their unhinged self-importance with attention. 1 month it's climate, next it's Gaza, then it's Elon, back to Gaza, an orgy for the offended. So when Greta finally docks and the cameras start rolling, just remember, this isn't about peace. It's about performance. The Palestinians are just bit players in Greta's movie about herself. Just like every single activist at Columbia or Harvard, activism is their drug. They do a lot of damage to others to make themselves feel good. Let's welcome tonight's guest. When he says he had a great night's sleep, he's referring to the great he slept on. StudioTSC.com, Michael Loftus. He used to wrestle as Kane and now drives liberals insane. Mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, Glenn Jacobs. She exposed teens to Bush, the band, and the president. Host of Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Kennedy. And that's not a 5-person sleeping bag. It's one of his gloves. New York Times bestselling author, comedian, and former NWA world champion, Tyrus. Michael, as someone with severe mental issues, are you surprised that nearly half of libs also have poor mental health?
What? No, let him go. It's fine. I'm surprised that many had it together long enough to answer the questions on the survey.
Yeah.
Because a truly crazy person, they'll just start, talking to the telephone that's really a can of beans.
Yes.
Like we do at the shelter at night.
Yes. How are the beans there?
They're delightful. Room temperature, bring your own opener.
Yes.
And I think that's what Greta Thunberg is going to sneak into Gaza.
Yes.
She's got a little sailboat.
Yes.
The How Dare You Too. Because that's her catchphrase.
Yes. How dare you?
How dare you stolen my childhood? And you see her now, and it's like watching Urkel.
Yes.
It's like, you're like, oh, wow, she's doing the How Dare You. The How Dare You girl. She's like 22 now.
Yeah.
And it's a secret mission to break Israel's blockade.
She is like a child actor.
Yes.
Yeah, when they age, it's weird.
It is.
Yeah,
like she's still out there doing the thing, but now she's wrapped in a Palestinian little get-up doing the How Dare You. It's a secret mission to break Israel's blockade.
Yes.
I'm not a military expert, but maybe you don't do a press conference about your secret mission? We're going to get on a sailboat with 5 cans of How Dare You stew.
So, Glenn, how on earth does Greta go from climate change to Gaza? It seems like it's more about her.
Well, I certainly hope she gets there in a hurry, her little raft, before global warming causes the oceans to rise and the whole thing's flooded.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes.
So, yeah, obviously she is a attention-seeking young lady who has some issues. And shame on the media and the left for exploiting that for their outrage of the month. You know, these are serious issues, no matter where you come down on them. They're serious issues, and they deserve to be treated with adult discussions, not like gossip at a pajama party.
Yeah, it is like mutually beneficial to both. The media gets the story, she gets the attention. They're working each other, right? You know that. What that's like, Kennedy, huh?
Oh, I lived through the 90s, Greg. You don't have to tell me about working each other.
Yeah.
Warren G. and Kurt Loder, the three of us will never be in the same room again.
Oh, my God. It's a shame you didn't have smartphones back then, huh?
We would have keistered him, Greg.
Yes, we would have. Isn't it she kind of just, didn't like the rest of the campus just catch up with her?
Yes. And they're all awful and annoying and sick, and they've made college almost completely worthless.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to a big state school in the South, or parts of the Midwest, it is totally a worthless experience because of virtue signalers like her, and it is, you are absolutely right, it is a mental illness, but the problem is they don't want to get better.
Right.
And they also cheapen actual mental illness and people who suffer with maladies that they're trying desperately to treat and to overcome. They don't want to overcome. I mean, this is an entire generation of people who just want to talk about their feelings and their grievances until they metastasize into this pint-sized narcissist who made the mistake of watching Emily in Paris and cut herself bangs.
I know.
That may be the greatest disservice here. Awful. But I love how she wants to crush Zionism. It's like, I'm surprised she's not doing the Cory Booker Nazi salute with language like that.
That's so true. Tyrus, it is funny how the media just basically doesn't care that she might be being exploited or that she's, quote, neurodivergent. They don't care until you criticize her. Then they bring it up.
Well, I always, whenever I see child actors that go awry, I always wonder about the parents.
Yeah.
So I wonder how much money her parents made at the expense of their child. And it's also weird. I don't know if it's a thing with being like, let's be fair. She wasn't like a cutie, you know, like she wasn't an adorable little girl crying. Like, you know, I'm just being real. Like if you have like a cute daughter and she cries, you melt as a father.
Yeah.
When you have one that's, you're kind of like, suck it up, you know? No, I'm just, so when she was, you've taken away my childhood, I was like,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If she was an adorable little girl, I'd be like, you sons of bitches took her childhood away.
Yeah.
I'm going to save a panda and a polar bear right now. That little girl needs to be happy. And then what happens is they grow up and they all seem to end up kind of looking like a Karen-ish person. With the bangs, I wasn't even, maybe she transitioned. Maybe it should be sir.
I don't know.
You know, like, I'm just saying, when you're unattractive and you're an activist, only the left is going to support you. If you want us to support you, at least be cute.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? At least be adorable. Have a nice voice. It's not even about the looks. It's not even about the looks. Have a nice voice. Sing that. Entertain us. We're like, you've taken away my child.
There's not one hot left-wing activist.
No, there's not.
There's not.
There's not.
No.
AOC.
AOC, well, that exception proves the rule.
You have a boner for her.
I happen to think that she's an intriguing individual.
You always talk about her speeches are riveting, and you would love to sit down and have dialogue.
Exactly. And she's got a nice ass. Fault driveway in front of her apartment.
Which is bad for the environment, which is ironic.
It is. This asphalt driveway. And she could fall
let's
and
talk
land
about
on
the
her
Shriner
ass.
kids again. That's fun.
All right. We must move on. Up next, Chuck Todd blames all the wrong people.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.